the geofeed slides that he just posted.
Oh.
If that would be interesting or not. Up to you guys. Up to Warren, I guess, since I don't see Randy in there.
If do you want to present it? I haven't seen them yet, so
you're an author. The slides are in your google.com inbox.
Let me ask the Mr. Randy if he would like us to try and present them if he's around. This promises to be a fun presentation. It'll be the first time I'm seeing the slides, so we'll go through it together, maybe.
I don't actually see them, but that doesn't mean...
If it has your name on it, and it's the first time you're seeing it, then that's maybe the best kind.
Yep.
All right, well, what we can do is we can work out the Randy slide location after we're at the IEPG in Bangkok. Hello from Bangkok.
It's nice and hot here.
It is hot, super sweaty. Okay, apparently we have a third presentation, but we can at least start with Jared. He can dealer's choice, whether it's the fiber to my house or BGP stories. And I'll stop presenting so he can go back to presenting.
Well, do you want to test out, the humming or whatever else?
No.
Nah, we don't need to do that.
To see who wants, because we don't vote. Ha 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 ha. All right, let me see if technology does the right thing. I think Warren or Chris, one of you has to press a button for me to share again. Yes, I really want to share my screen. And is this the right one? No, that's the wrong one. Excellent. Well, I figured I will start with this one. So, good morning. Welcome to Bangkok, everyone. This will be our life for the next week and a half as we participate in the IETF and such. I have to apologize to Jeff because I think he has heard this one before because I presented it elsewhere, but this is a slightly different slide deck than what I did there. So some quick background. So I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've lived in my current house since 2002. And my employer, at the time working for NTT, I had a T1 to the local POP in town, which in 2002 was still pretty awesome connectivity at home. Around Ann Arbor, there's the usual, development that happens around big cities, kind of on the outskirts, the suburbs and stuff like that. And, as many of us know, broadband was evolving in the late 90s, early 2000s for what technologies were available as cable systems went two-way. We go to VDSL services and everyone starts talking about fiber to cabinets and stuff nearby you. But nothing actually came out where I live. So I live about 2 miles away from an existing service area. I live on the west side of Ann Arbor. You keep going further west, you go out next to the farm. So that little pin is actually where I am standing roughly right now. I went out and I used my compass and other equipment to go and measure exactly where everything is. And you can see, kind of these green spaces around Ann Arbor, and kind of in the upper left, you can see the beginnings of the layout of a new subdivision. And as time goes on, you start to see, that subdivision get developed. You start to see, other lands and properties around the area start to pick up, and slowly you have things fill in. You've got a new grocery store that's out in the area, and slowly but surely things fill in. We get a new home improvement store, and there's a new subdivision that was going in there. kind of behind the new home improvement store, et cetera. Just going back through the imagery and stuff. So I have this problem. I work in the internet industry, and I have no high-speed internet available. In the US, if you're not familiar, generally when you sell a home, the seller pays a commission based on however much you sell the home for. And that can represent a significant cost to move your house. And effectively, my home is devalued in the marketplace, talking to realtors, because there's no high-speed internet accessible. So what do? I go and I work with local ISP, a little wireless ISP, and they came to the rescue for about 10 years or so. So what do? How do you solve this type of problem, conflict, et cetera? So I actually went and I started a telco. I am now the big, bad, evil telco around me. So you have to, in my case, I had to file a tariff, and hopefully one day, I'll turn massive profits as a result of this. So you have to go out and acquire customers, you have to acquire internet access, you have to do construction, hire contractors, obtain fiber, and all of these things that you need to do once you're a telephone company. So you have tons of research, planning, and you have to actually piece together, all the finances and stuff. So what I did was I started to actually doing pre-builds. Because I work with the local wireless ISP, I started connecting all of my neighbors to fiber to my house, because the local 5 gigahertz spectrum, as everyone is upgrading their technologies at home, that started to cause congestion on the local, on the local wireless that was providing access to them. As you're doing research, you find your access costs. Eventually, AT&T actually rolled in with DSL in my area. And for $40 a month, I can get speeds up to 1.5 megabits per second. I tried to reach out to Comcast as well, amongst other providers that are available. And Comcast was actually remarkably the easiest service provider to work with. AT&T, you couldn't get a hold of anybody there to have them understand what the connectivity was. That there's fiber 1,200 feet from my house that AT&T owns, and actually, as far as I know, is actually connected to a cell tower that has no antennas on it. So would be completely available to be used. Comcast was reasonable. They could actually give me a price and say, hey, it's going to be $50,000. And I started talking to my neighbors and saying, hey, for $50,000, I'm willing to pay, some portion of this, I was willing to probably pay $10,000 to pay Comcast $10,000 to extend the fiber to my neighborhood, but I was not going to eat the entire $50,000 cost, because that's a significant expense for me to pay somebody to extend their network so they can have all the customers. So I start playing around with technology. I play around with active Ethernet solutions. I actually ended up buying an OLT for doing GPON. And I started engaging marketing activities. I joined all the local Facebook groups and talked to all my neighbors. And I also mailed letters to all the potential subscribers. I talked to a bunch of different ISPs in Michigan who are already doing fiber to the home, who either were engaging active Ethernet and stuff, as well as engaged with community groups. There was a not-for-profit that was set up called the Michigan Broadband Cooperative. I talked to all the people as part of that, and they were really looking for big grants to go and do things. And there's a couple other small local ISP cooperatives that are set up to basically provide wireless services. And as part of the efforts of that, the Michigan Broadband Co-op, one of the local townships nearby me actually passed a millage, and they raised taxes to fund all underground fiber infrastructure for all the residents in the environment that entire township. So what do? You got to put your money where your mouth is. I purchased a fusion splicer. I started buying that fiber in 2017. I ended up buying an OTDR in 2018. Because these things were starting to come down and be affordable enough that you could actually spend some money on them, get the technology, have it be available for you, and do that. I also then started going and working with people to get design prints all done. I had that tariff that I had to file. I joined, in Michigan, it's called the MISDIG system, or in most of the US, it's known as the 811 system or DigSafe or something. And I actually turned in all the, these giant prints, as well as my permit in April of 2019. And eventually, after a long time, I ended up getting the permit issued to me in 2019 and stuff. Because of that, and the time of year, because I live in an environment where we actually get snow in the middle of the winter, that basically pushed my schedule into 2020. So how was I successful at doing this? Well, I started off spending, small amounts of money. I found all the distributors. I pre-purchased a fair amount of the equipment, just such that I wasn't taking a giant financial hit all at once. My initial planning I came back and had estimates of this is going to be a $60,000 project. I had to go and save all my pennies, from bonuses, and I actually copied a model from another ISP here in Michigan called Virgins Fiber or VB Fiber, where a customer can pay $5,000 up front and receive a $50 service credit for 100 months. And that's nice because you can say, oh, well, how about you give me $1,000? I give you $10 off for 100 months, it stays with the property, and really, really helped me offset some of those initial startup costs. As well as the thing that I think is most important is the customer is still paying something. They don't just then get free service for a period of time. And that really kind of makes sure that you're maintaining that customer relationship and make sure that the service is working. So I actually sat down and I did a full plan of what the monthly operating expenses are, how much it would cost me to for internet access along the way, look at every single month, how much it's going to cost me, for repairs, for insurance, all the materials and everything that I need to do. And then also went and modeled how many customers I would have. And I slowly revised this number up for the number of customers as I continue to get more people to commit to sign up, for the service plan. So I could figure out, okay, how's this going to work out? Am I going to actually be able to turn a profit with this? How much is my monthly operating profit going to be, et cetera, et cetera? And this is the spreadsheet that I used, including, putting some formulas in there to say, okay, if I stop growing, how many months until I pay off that initial investment? And you see that there in the bottom in row 38. So I spent a lot of time with the spreadsheet, really trying to understand what my costs are, what all those things were, and really forecast, and talk to a number of different service providers about how they handle things like disputes, refunds, bad debts, as well as whether or not you want to fire customers. I talked about this a little bit already. I actually worked with, in the WISP, I actually pre-wired everybody at my own expense, as opposed to asking him to do that. I basically said, listen, I'm going to do this, and after all of that, once I get a high-speed connection to my house, all these people become my customer. And that actually worked well for the wireless ISP as well. So what does an install look like? This is the boxes I actually put on the outside of the home, here in the center and on the left. And on the right is actually where I have a 24 count fiber cable that comes into my basement. And you can see all the wipes from doing the splices for that that apparently were on the floor for that photo there. Typical customer installation. I'm using the Ubiquiti UFiber Instant SFP. I put that in the MikroTik media converter. I've got this box that I use for terminating the splice in. You've got an armored patch cord that goes between the two boxes, and you run power over Ethernet from the inside to the outside of the house. And this is nice because I can show up at the person's home, I can test the service, and without them needing to be there, and do troubleshooting and other work, because I'm a telco. I don't want to have to do stuff on the customer schedule. I also have these MikroTik, the HAP AC2, and there's now the HAP AC3 routers, which I'll probably start toying around with. I actually just sell these to people at cost if they say, oh, I need a wireless router or something like that. So what does it look like? You see all these construction supplies that you get from your distributors. I'll tell you, nothing is funnier than showing up in a Prius to pick up a bunch of these materials, from the place. You start digging and drilling, under driveways and, burying all these things. Lots and lots of fun. For the customer acquisition, I used this tool that my county has available called Map Washtenaw. I'm in Washtenaw County in Michigan. You can look at all the property shapes, get the owner names, and how I signed everybody up. I sent them a letter on paper in the mail. That actually worked remarkably well. I actually just yesterday hooked up one of the people who when he received the letter, he said, "Is this a scam?" He called me on the phone and said, "Is this a scam?" It was a very funny conversation. I'm like, yes, I'm going to tell you it's a scam over the phone that I'm trying to scam you to get internet access. He was very happy. Once he got hooked up, the very next day he started pulling 50 megs continuous, because I try to keep an eye on people when they get first hooked up and make sure it works smoothly. And you could tell because he was using DSL and satellite as backup for that. Here in what is seemingly a very urban area, or somewhat urban area, very nearby. Plus, the thing about his house that's interesting is there's actually fiber in front of his house on poles, which is just one of those things that boggles your mind. Is that I have in one spot right next to a farm field, there's my fiber that crosses two other people's fiber out in the middle in this farm field, because it goes to a cell tower. So you mail out these letters. I got invited to one of the neighborhood association meetings. Once construction started, I sent out more letters, more people signed up, and ultimately about 70% of the homes signed up that I passed. I was projecting it was going to be about 35%, is how I did my initial financial model to see what it would take to do this. So internet access. I originally went and talked to a number of different companies. One of them is 123net. Because of all of the excitement of COVID this year, they actually were delayed in getting me services. And ACDnet, who I had talked to as well, they called me back in the beginning of March. And so I had started construction and I didn't yet actually have my internet access fully lined up. And ACD was able to actually give me fiber access exactly where I wanted, which was very important. I'm still waiting. I was told within the next 2 weeks I'm actually going to get V6 from them. They have to go through and actually enable it on their network because they don't actually have it, and that's something important. But with Aaron, you can apply for IPv6 space for your service provider. Once you have V6 space, you can actually apply for IPv4 space. So despite the fact that there's a run out of address space, I think everybody is well aware of that. It is still possible to start a brand new ISP here in 2020, 2021 timeframe. I already had a spare ASN line around, and so I'm able to actually BGP peer with ACDnet, and once I get connected to 123, I'm also getting a connection to the Detroit IX. So this is what the project picture ultimately looks like once you turn in the plans. Spent lots of time doing that, and you can see some of the shapes started to get filled in further to the west there as more people signed up along the way. I had to hire contractors. I had to maintain a good working relationship with them. I would, one day a week, I would actually buy them food to keep them happy and working. Otherwise, there were these three brothers, and one of them or the other one would get like hangry with the others. And I had lots of little issues I had to resolve along the way. If you're going to hire a contractor to do a big project like this, you really need to have policies around things like social media posts and stuff like that. And make sure they have all the right equipment. I ended up helping them out in a few cases because I'm a little bit more mechanically inclined than some of them in troubleshooting, things with, batteries and engines and stuff like that. So here we are. Here they are out working. There is an 18-inch natural gas pipeline actually at the end of my road that runs kind of at an angle behind my property. And so this is them using basically a giant shop vac, and then you use a pressure washer type thing to actually spray the dirt, and then you suck it up, with basically this industrial shop vac to get, so you can actually find the utilities underground, so you don't bore through an 18-inch pipeline and cause a big mess. So you're doing a big project like this, you're absolutely going to have problems. I call this the cursed corner because every time you would phone in to 811 and say, hey, I need you to mark this, they never marked it twice the same way. They would mark the fiber as the gas, they'd mark the gas as the fiber, and it actually took my contractor 3 times to bore successfully through that intersection. And I did this little drawing, which isn't quite accurate, but this, the green lines are mine, the orange is the fiber that goes through the intersection, and the yellow is the natural gas pipeline that goes right there in a very, very weird order. And there's a 10-foot size culvert right there that goes diagonally to let the water flow through. And so my conduit is just right underneath that. So I bought some equipment. I actually bought this vintage directional drill. I have a borrowed cable plow. It's basically used for burying service drop cables. It's got a vibrating blade, and it is actually owned by the wireless ISP that I previously used. Here's some photos of the equipment, and you can see, the machine for burying the cable. It's got a chute there, and so you just drive along in the ground. It vibrates, and it just buries the cable as it goes. It works remarkably well. But sometimes when you have equipment, bad things happen. So the cable plow actually was stolen. It ended up for sale in Facebook Marketplace. I blurred out the guy's name who was selling it and other stuff, but it turned up, I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It turned up in Chicago for sale, as you can see in Aurora, Illinois. And then this photo that I have here on the left, it shows in the spring when I was pulling some of the conduit out of my yard. The ground was a little too soft, but this photo ended up being really helpful in us actually recovering the machine, because this was actually the best photo of that specific machine, including very specific wear marks on it that allowed the police to go and recover it from the person's home. I also received a stop work order in the middle of it. It's kind of interesting because, like all things, I actually got stop worked for the reason other. They say no staked right of way. The road commission people, they want me to have the right of way staked. We did have it staked, but we didn't have it staked at sufficient intervals for them to make the guy happy. And so he came out and stopped that. Also, we notified them when we were starting the project, but they wanted to be notified every 48 hours prior to a work crew being on site that was going to work on the project, so they could do drive-by inspections. So that was part of my unbudgeted cost. When you're doing a big project, you've got that. So that was another $5,000 for that. I had to go and put wire in the conduit to get them to say it was okay for us to resume. They want to know how deep it was and all that stuff. I had to spend $1,500 on a water meter hydrant, like a hydrant hookup, to go and make it such that they could, do all the boring with nice clean water. I also printed up employee badges for myself and my kids and stuff for that. The other thing that happens is, everyone makes jokes about people hitting the fiber, that it's buried or whatever. Quite often these things are not marked well, or they maybe mark the main line, but they don't actually mark the service drop that goes up to somebody's house. And they're often not even buried deep. You can see here, this one was about 4 inches deep below below that, as well as, we have this conduit that got hit, which was actually part of the conduit that my contractor actually installed as well. They got it wrapped around stuff. So sometimes you even hit your own stuff even as you're installing it. So if you don't know, to install fiber, you generally blow it in with a giant industrial air compressor. I'll tell you something, this reel of fiber here on the left, it was 20,000 feet of fiber. So just, let's say about 4 miles or so. That all got pulled off by hand, off that reel. And so, you know, when you realize that you've done, you know, that you've pulled off 4 miles of fiber by hand, that can be quite rewarding. And you get to hear the sound. Apparently, people in my house are printing as well. So sorry about that. So as part of this, I actually built my own fiber blower out of parts available at your local hardware store, for the most part, except for this Chicago fitting that goes on the industrial air compressor hose. I actually blew 2,700 feet, you know, without issue. It took me a long time to get this working just right. You know, we spent a lot of time trying to put stuff in the conduit. It didn't quite work right, and I would go and consult with the various experts at the other ISPs about, hey, how do you do this? How does this work out? And you know, it's about a 15, you know, I'll say 15,000 foot project that we did, and it took a whole bunch of days of renting that machine to get, you know, the first 7,500 feet in. We got the last 7,500 feet in less than 24 hours, which was really amazing. Once you have all the fiber in, you need to start splicing it. So I've got, this corner has a bunch of service drop cables as well as mainline cables going, you know, I've got fiber going north, south, and east here at this intersection, plus the homes on each side are hooked up. And so you get out and you start sitting on buckets on the side of the road, trying to piece stuff together, because I don't have a fancy splice trailer and stuff. Once you have it all together, if you've never seen an OTDR trace, this is what one looks like. And you can see kind of each place along the way where I did a bad splice. You can really see that step-off drop of that. And so when I went to go turn up the connection, did this trace, and it's like, oh my goodness, I have 9 dB loss on, you know, 2.5 miles of fiber, which is just horrible. So I go out, I resplice it, you know, it looks a lot better. I have this older splicer that's, I have to manually align the fibers each time. And I also need to go and upgrade my OTDR because it's, you know, it's an older one that I have there. So I've been in this industry for a long time. I have a scheduled install date. I know what I'm doing. I'm totally going to do this, right? Well, had all sorts of issues there too. You know, the tech has to go install optic and the CO. He put the channel 44 optic in their DWDM system because he's like, hey, we're talking to you at channel 44. He goes and he plugs that in. He put it in the only system that had channel 44 available, which makes a lot of sense. But that actually wasn't the case. When they came out and they tested the fiber handoff to me, the guy put a 1 gig optic and a 10 dB attenuator, you know, in their system, and that was left over, and so obviously that was done wrong. He delivered the 10 gig optic to my house for what I was supposed to be doing. He actually handed me a 10 gig LR, which is like a 10 kilometer reach, but it was, you know, it's not DWDM and it's not the 80 kilometers that needs to be. I also had the carrier wanted to give me like a really big switch and say, hey, I want to give you this CPE. I want to give you a 6500. If you've never seen one of those, think, you know, a quarter rack, a half rack piece of equipment. I pleaded with them. I said, no, it's my house. I really don't want to have like a 2 kW base load added to my house. And I don't want to add additional power drops. So it's a Friday night. What are you supposed to do? I end up ultimately talking to this tech who's just amazing. You know, I met him Friday night at 7 p.m. I had to drive an hour to get up to there. I gave them back their optic. He gave me a 1 gig optic. Visited a friend up there in Lansing. I drove home. I plugged in the optic, and all of a sudden, boom, my link comes up. So looking at, you know, stuff before on my wireless connection, I've got about a 30 millisecond latency to my server in Chicago. Afterwards, I'm about 8.5 milliseconds. Really big difference. You know, you put together your trace routes, all the good things you want. This is from my smoke ping. This shows kind of the visual reduction of the latency and all that. So what am I supposed to do? I was expecting to get this 10 gig link. It's a 1 gig. They haven't set up BGP yet. You know, I'm already on plan B or C or D or something now. So I end up taking the 1 gig DWDM optic. I put it in this Edge Router X SFP. It can totally do NAT. I wasn't expecting to do 10 gigs of traffic immediately anyways. You know, it's really, you know, I signed a multi-year contract for access. So I wanted to have it be easy to upgrade without having to take everything down. So I drop that thing in. I flip over my default route onto this new path. I NAT to the WAN IP because I'm not routing my IP space yet. And then what do? You run a speed test. And this is, you know, I say slide to make Dave happy because there's this guy, Dave Tempkin, who works at Netflix. So I've got all my neighbors pre-wired, you know, due to the agreement with the WISP. I take that, I remove all the rate limiters under service. I send them a text message. They're like, yowza, you know. So eventually we get the optic swapped, we get the attenuator, you know, removed, we get BGP up, and everything else. So I've got people, I started to wire them up in the spring. Some of them were connected in late August or early September. You know, I paused installations for, you know, in September because my wife had surgery. I also stopped doing some installs because I got tired of cutting people's DSL lines. Because AT&T's contractor wouldn't mark, wouldn't mark them all correctly, and you know it feels really bad taking down people's service. So what did it cost? You know, I spent about $95,000 to, you know, for my contractor just for labor. You know, I've had, you know, about $32,000 of stuff. You know, I don't know. It was, you know, it's pretty expensive. It's probably still cheaper than moving, maybe, but you know, I have fiber. I don't have to fix up the house to make it saleable. So I didn't update this one, but I've got about 27 customers online now. The wireless ISP, he's connected to me. I actually have, I think 11 people who I'm working on installing right now. Still left over, but I've actually had 2 more people sign up as I was doing work out in front of their homes recently. But I'm trying to get all these people, you know, connected. So what's it look like? Network usage, it's, you know, about 5 megabits a subscriber. The thing that's a little bit tricky here is this actually factors in the WISP as well, who has about, you know, 24 customers downstream from his port, where he's sending me traffic as well. But it's still kind of a reasonable number. I have a whole bunch of people I can't even list everything, you know, everyone. I actually was just out having my kids help me load up some more of the handholds and stuff in the back of the truck because the 123net construction is actually ongoing right now, and so I need to go drop those off tonight, tomorrow for them. And I have lots of neighbors who I annoyed along the way. And there's a lot of people who really have put up with me, encouraged me along the way, saying, yeah, you should totally do this. You know, I have friends who come out and would help me, you know, due to the COVID times. They, you know, some of them were just like, yeah, I'll totally come out, help you pull fiber, push fiber, below fiber, you know, whatever. And they really helped out. There's some cool Facebook groups, you know, for other operator types where they actually talk about, you know, turning up really cool wireless links or, you know, doing fiber internet access and stuff and all that. So Job Schneider's, he actually got somebody to draw this picture of me, which was pretty cool. So I am happy to take any questions people have about this.
This is Warren.
If you had streams all over, would you? Like
Sorry.
knowing what you know now, would you redo this again, or was it more work than you expected?
It's definitely more work than I expected, but I think it was very rewarding work. That is something, you know, I had to leave a meeting when we got the stop work order, I had to leave a meeting I was in with finance and my VP to go out and deal with the situation that was emerging on the road nearby me. And so there's a lot of things there's a lot of sacrifices that had to be made in order to make this possible. But the big thing is, so in Michigan, school doesn't start until after Labor Day, which, if you're international, it's, right after the beginning of September. And to get the service up and get this all ready such that all the schools around me were starting virtual, to get that ready and to help the community out, help the neighbors, et cetera, get them online, and prioritizing homes with children is really, I think it's something where it takes a lot of skills to piece all this together. I'm blessed that I was able to piece this together for a lot of these people and make it possible for them to work from home, including I have a principal who lives on my street and I have a teacher who lives on my street. And so they've been able to do things from home, especially as school started virtual. So that for me is really, I think, the big rewarding piece from doing this. But it's a lot of work. I was out, we had unseasonably warm weather the past couple of days, and I've been out still hooking people up. It's a lot of work. I probably would I would contract out more of the stuff, but because I made assurances to these people that they get connected at certain prices, I can't really, I can't fully afford to outsource that rate quite yet. I'm going to charge them more money next time.
Okay, and Jeff has a question which he entered in the chat. What's your budget for dealing with outages and fiber repairs from idiots eating your fiber?
So pretty much, my budget is $200 a month. I can go back to the slide that showed that. So the budget is $200 a month. But I haven't had I've only had one person cut their fiber, in all this time. And it was one of my neighbors, and it was really funny because I got a text from the wife at that house saying the landscapers cut their fiber. And then I go over and investigate, and I talk to the husband, and he says, yeah, I cut the fiber, on accident. So it's kind of funny, but then they were like, oh, we're actually just gonna take this as a blessing and and go out and go out of town for a few days. And so I now have all the proper repair equipment, so I can go out and and fix stuff and dig up and kind of add a section. But it's for the most part, once it's in the ground, it doesn't get dug up. That's why a lot of the people put the stuff in the ground. And at least around here, this is on a main road that I drive past every single day. So if somebody's going to be out digging on it, I'm going to see it. And all my stuff is protected in conduit. So they really got to be, it's down, the contractor put it down 6 feet deep in some places, and it's deeper than that. Obviously where it crosses, where there's a 10-foot culvert. So I am, I'm not too worried about it, but I have money set aside in the budget for that.
Okay. And then I have another question.
So Jen's in the queue.
Wow, there's a bad echo.
Jen's in the queue.
Oh, she is? Sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
That's pretty cool. I'm just curious. So are you now 24/7 on call for this thing? What's your support model?
Effectively, yes.
Oh my God.
So it's actually even worse than that in some ways. So because I'm a member of the 811 system, I have obligations under there to go out and mark my fiber if somebody is going to go dig. And the way you do that is you upload a shapefile or you upload a KML. They can now do KMLs, and you upload that saying this is the area that I have some responsibility for. And if somebody digs up a gas line, or if somebody's electrical service line underground fails or something, I can be required to show up on 2 hours notice to go and mark my fiber if I want to protect that. And so with that, it's interesting. So, the follow-up question I'm sure is, so what happens if I'm on a plane to Bangkok? So I have, I've helped out the existing wireless ISP for the past 10 years off and on with his stuff. And he's basically signed up to help do repairs and stuff when I'm out of town, as I've done for him when he's been out of town traveling for, on family vacations or otherwise. But yeah, it's a big obligation.
Wow, thanks.
Do you want to read a reply to Jeff's chat question?
Yeah, I can absolutely respond to this one. So this is actually a profitable project. Like I am bringing in positive cash flow every month from doing this project. So Jeff's question is, why do I think it's viable for me to do this? Because I can actually buy wholesale internet for a reasonable price. Up at the corner, you can't, but I wasn't able to do it at my house because a lot of the commercial models that these carriers use is that they want ROI to be 12 months. And I'm happy with, a 4-year ROI because that's what I would burn through that money in trying to make my home ready to be saleable, to deal with all of this, the drama that you have to deal with when you move, hiring movers, getting all that stuff done. And the things that are really broken here are that fact that there is that fiber 1,200 feet from my house. Almost every single person I've hooked up, there is fiber in front of their house or within, a quarter of a mile. And that, I think, is the thing that's really amazing is you have AT&T in the US who basically has said, we're discontinuing our traditional DSL service. You have to be able to be on the high speed, like the VDSL, services are better to do this. And I think the big thing is you have to have people who are willing to invest in it and just take a slightly longer ROI model. Comcast, they want a 12-month ROI for their investment. So just responding to Jeff, if it's viable for me, why isn't it viable for them? It's that, like I said, I'm willing to take a 42-month ROI on my initial investment. I also put a lot of sweat equity into there where if I had some of it, if I had outsourced it, it would have actually cost me the same or less. Especially if I value my time at something other than zero. But a lot of this is, it's like many things, it's labor of love. So for Eric, he's asking what sorts of environmental concerns affect the fiber, snow, water table, into pipes, et cetera. So many of these things, the fiber is actually protected quite heavily. So it's not only in conduit, in that corner where it's wet or where there's that giant drain, I actually, when it gets wet nearby that corner, and my handhole on the north side actually has water that will flow through it from the north to the south side because that's the path of least resistance between the two locations. And it took so the fiber for the most part is fine with that because it's not only has, it's in the conduit, even if the conduit has water in it, it has an outer buffer, it has an outer protective jacket. It's got strength members, fiberglass strength members that could be compacted. And then it has the inner buffer tube, which also could be compacted on top of that. So even if it goes through a freeze thaw cycle, it is relatively unlikely that it's going to be damaged. And even if that happens, through the entire project, I actually pulled 2 conduits because it was only, the materials plus the labor were only 60 cents more a foot. And so for a 14,000, 15,000 foot project, it basically was not a significant expense to go and pull a second conduit. So I have opportunities to correct all of the mistakes that I made along the way. And then Brian Dixon, I kind of missed your question. How many subscribers do I need to be able to retire? A lot more. But what's interesting is I actually have, so our county did this broadband study, and the people who run that are one of the people who got the contract for that is actually somebody who is part of that original broadband cooperative effort. And actually built, there's a network in Detroit called Rocket Fiber, and he did a lot of the design for that. And he actually, because he got a contract to drive the entire county, go down every road and everything. And so he figured out who has services where and what and how. And he's now identified, and people talked to him while he was out doing that. He has identified some pockets of areas where people are willing to pay to have service extended to them. So what's funny is, aside from the large incumbents like AT&T and Comcast in my area, I'm actually the largest independent fiber to the home provider in my county at having 20 some subscribers. It's almost 30 now. Having 20 some subscribers signed up. And so to get enough customers to be financially independent, I have this problem of my day job probably pays me a little bit too much. And so because of that, I would need to get much bigger in order to offset that. So Warren is asking whether or not I've had any legal issues from the incumbents. No, I'm a telephone company just like they are. They could permit this and do it just the same way. They can go read my tariff. If they want to buy services from me under my tariff, they absolutely can. My tariff's funny. Everything's what's called everything's ICB, individual case basis. So I can price it however I want. Let me look and make sure nobody else is in the queue. Nope. So with that, I am going to see what happens when I do that. Stop screen sharing. So let me pull up the other slides that I did up. And this is going to be a little more show and tell-ish. And Warren or Chris, if you can press the magic button. Thank you. So this, I wanted to do a little bit more on this. So please treat this like a lightning talk. So I don't know how many people remember August 30th. We had AS209, the legacy Quest ASM, now CenturyLink. It's got parts of, Level 3, Global Crossing, all these people who've been all rolled together, into a big network. And so I wanted to, one of the things I regularly do is I look at, the route views BGP update data. And I look for ways to identify events. And what I did is I ended up writing some code to process the BGP data, because what happened during that event, or apparently happened during that event, is they sort of stopped processing BGP withdrawals. They would still advertise routes for which they didn't have reachability, and that is a very interesting event in and of itself. So I went and I took some data and I kind of poked through that and came up with this metric of, you measure the number of announced routes divided by the withdrawn routes over the time period. So the route views MRT data has information about what the peered ASN is and stuff. And I took all this data and I bucketed it into 6-second intervals, so a tenth of a minute, and I kept track of the global measurement. So all of the data, through all of the peers for that time window for that data file, as well as the per ASN data. And so when you go and you look at a day like the 30th of August, you actually end up with something like this. And you can actually see in this graph, and this, my Grafana is set up to, it shows me data in my local time zone. So if you kind of click through this link, because the slides should be online, you should be able to go and see this. And you can actually see the time period where the service provider said, hey, we're going to de-peer the 209 network. And you can see this view from behind NTT, which is the classic network that I pick on for hopefully obvious reasons. And so pretty please be very nice to this machine. It is an Intel NUC sitting downstairs in my basement. And and I loaded all of the route views data that is available for the BGP updates. All the way back to, I think it was 2000 or something, is when it's there. I have the data in influx. If somebody wants to get a replicated feed of it, I'm happy to go and do that. But I went back and it took a couple weeks to do this. I went back and I post-processed all of that data because I didn't use super fast computers to do it and all that, and fed all stuff through. So with that, let me show you. Hopefully this does the right thing. Yep, it does. And so this is actually the day of that event. And like I said, this is in my local time zone. And what you can actually see is the network impact for these different ASs. And so for some of them, you can see, here's the 2914 one, which looks kind of interesting, because obviously you have this period where there's an instability. You can see it in the graph, and then you have this quiet, you have this kind of quiet threshold. And a number that I use is kind of 50. If this ratio gets above 50, that really shows something interesting. And so, the provider number, or the number of announcements withdraws is on the left side, and on the right-hand side is this, is this ratio. And so you can go and actually use this to determine what networks were really adversely impacted based on the data that shows up in route views during this time period. So you can see people who were maybe not too impacted, and then picking on this AS, I'm not sure who this is, but you can really see they were very, this network here was very badly impacted and very spiky during this time period for what that event actually did to them. And so I would like to go back and do a bit more of a study of this and say, okay, with this type of data, can you, to what extent can you detect these levels of network instability? Can you measure these and figure out, okay, which providers are either originating this instability or which ones are severely impacted by external instability? And so this provider, you can actually look at what was seen by their ASN, and you can actually see they were severely impacted during this entire time period by the instability that was globally visible. And you can see it during the event. You can see the portions where either they disconnected or tried to disconnect. When they reconnected, you can see basically these very clear lines when you graph them with the before and after period. And so I wanted to do this to go and find all sorts of other events that may be interesting. So hopefully you guys didn't, I see it's not loading. Hopefully you guys didn't kill the machine, but like I said, you're kind of welcome to poke around in there. And if you want, I figure some people like Jeff are probably already in there. poking around, and you can go and look at specific time ranges and kind of pick out, okay, this is when something happened. So when we pick, I think, Tata and Telia have had different events in the past 2 years, and they really stand out on these graphs. But I didn't have enough time in between, my day job and my night job, and everything else to kind of put together any better slides on this or present some more of the data of the events. But I found this to be a very accurate metric for detecting when something is going on. So I'll skip to questions.
I suspect people are clicking around on all the pretty charts and graphs and stuff, and so don't be at the moment. So we do actually have another surprise presentation from Randy, and we will let him take that away. Thank you very much, Jared. I'm assuming you will still be around if people want to put questions in the chat.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We will now try and do the screen sharing dance again. Thank you very much. No audio and no screen share working yet. We can see you though. That's always a plus. Still no audio. Says that you've got audio. Just can't do the. Nope. Nope, nope. I keep my piece of paper. I keep my piece of paper with the "we cannot hear you" and the more useful stupid technology one. We will let you know when we hear you.
I anxiously await Comic Sans slides.
And what's more, Comic Sans in purple or magenta. I suspect that it is. Oh, we got some audio. Can quiet. It sounded like Randy quietly though. I'm assuming that Randy is using a Mac and will have to grant whatever browser he's using screen sharing permissions. I would suspect, because that's often the failure, is that the browser does not have rights to.
I see the news. You do not read.
That I suspect that that's not the mic you're using because it's very quiet.
It sounds like it's not quite plugged in all the way. Like it's
Or
grounded.
that, or that it's using a different mic.
Yeah, but we could barely. Like I could tell he was talking.
Yeah. Quietly.
Share the screen as well.
Well, where's the audio chooser button? Up on the top right, there's the thing that lets you choose which audio device. I'm assuming you have fiddled with that. The thing that looks like a monkey wrench and a screwdriver. And that might give you a hint as to which mic it thinks it's using, because it doesn't seem to be the lapel/headset mic.
I know, it's a long time. So it's telling us we shouldn't be doing this.
So on a Mac, if you click on the system preferences thing, and then security and privacy, and then screen recording, sorry, security and privacy, and then screen recording. Your browser should be listed there and have a check mark. And if that's not working, then I can just try and present the slides that you gave me earlier, but we still can't hear you very well.
And you have to restart the browser.
Oh yes, you need to restart the browser after granting it permissions because it's the Mac privacy thing only gets capabilities only get granted at operating system or at application startup. So while Randy's redoing stuff, so yeah, for my carrying on from my earlier thing, yeah, I know that you count as a telco. Just when some friends and I had started looking, our local cable provider started making all sorts of, we will create legal entertainment for you, excitement, and make sure that you have lawyers ready. So when we drag you in front of various, it was fairly clear it was just harassment type behavior. But hopefully we will have a Randy back soon.
Yeah, so just to talk about that, Warren, that was actually one of the issues that I had with the permitting process is that I was delayed because the state didn't list me immediately on the list of telecommunications providers. And that delayed them. So they're like, oh, well, we're not gonna, we're gonna wait on processing your permit application. And they waited 30 days every single time we turned in new print. So they would say, go fix this. Oh, we're gonna wait 30 days and then respond to you 28 days later. I would get an email from them being like, oh, change this. So it was nice when finally got the permit paperwork and everything else.
So wonder why Randy's screen share is not working, but I can hopefully share the last set of slides you gave me. Or if you quickly email me the updated set of slides, I could share those and you can just say next and I can click the buttons. Especially if you happen to have them as PDF, otherwise I can convert them. Either will work. Yay, technology. Actually, yay, security and privacy.
So I have mailed it to you. Do you hear me yet?
Yes, we hear you much better now.
Okay. You see me, but I don't have screen share. Enter screen queue.
There we go. I have just clicked yes.
Requested.
I clicked yes to grant
Yes, I
you
really
screen
want
sharing.
to share my screen. Error. The request is not allowed by the user agent or the platform. Should I leave Firefox and go for Chrome or something?
Yeah, it will probably work in Chrome, but you would still need to grant. You would need to start Chrome and then go back into security and privacy. Then Chrome will show up in your list of apps.
Both of them have.
In that case, yep, Chrome should do it for you. It's something funny with.
Both of them have full privileges. I use these for joining, Microsoft Teams and all that crud.
Okay. Well, if you quickly reconnect with Chrome, that should do it for you.
I'm in the process.
Okay.
This website uses cookies, login via DataDrek. Oh, great. Yeah, so this is silly. Why are we doing this? I don't like doing. Yes, I want to show this application window. This one. Sure. Any better?
Whee! Perfect.
Psychedelic. And you can hear me.
And we can hear you. And you sound like you.
Is this a bug or a feature?
Unclear.
Oh, great. And it's going to flip little bits at a time. I love that. Let me just resize slightly. See if this works. So, geolocation IP number, everybody has to live and die with it. You have to deal with country regulations, localized content, and all that stuff. And even researchers like it. Who's actually providing those services? Here's a whole list of people providing geolocation services. In other words, I can take an IP address and ask them where it is, and they will come up with a guess. And if your data incorrect, you have to contact every one of them, and every 3 days on Nanog, we see somebody writing, oh, my customers can't get to, free porn or whatever, and please help me get geolocated. The problem is there is no there. There's no central repository of this information, no strategy even. There are no authoritative data. Companies make up their own data and enrich them with data from geolocation providers, etc. So it's a mess. So how do they do it? How do the geolocation providers do it? They use WHOIS data mostly, but also DNS and Strange Magic. But Warren and Eric and a couple others wrote 8805, which has this thing called a geofeeds file. And that lets you take an address and break it down, an address range, a prefix, and break it down by country and state and city and that kind of stuff. And that's in RFC 8805. Oops, sorry. So the format for self-published, in other words, I'm an ISP, I should publish where all my garbage is, only if I want to publish it. And I can geolocate single IPs, prefixes, etc. Longest prefix matches the game as always. And you can go down to the city level. I gather they decided not to go to finer because in some locations, finer would actually break privacy because, there's only one person on the block. So many geolocation providers already use geofeed files. In other words, they accept them from you. So like the IETF meeting when we end up in Bangkok like we are today, we give Google the geofeed file for the IPs we're using, and they'll locate us properly. The discussion of the geofeed file formats in the geofeeds working group. I don't want to discuss it today. There is no geofeeds working group, so have fun. But how do you find the geofeeds file? That's what we're after. Oops. So we suggest you use the IRR whois lookup. Okay, and we add a remarks field to it. Oh, look up the INetNum, because INetNum gives you a nice range. You get in a remark, you get a geofeed file. Somebody with a mic is typing. Okay, and it's in the remarks, which is ugly. So I think Yob is already attacking this and trying to get, and the document specifies that, hey, if you can get a change in the RPSL, you do it with a geofeed attribute instead of a remarks attribute. And that's in the RPSL WG, except there isn't one. So what's cool, though, there's a dirty trick going on here, is the RIRs whois lookups, if given an address, give you the closest surrounding INet, covering INetNum, magically. Okay, so somebody suggested, why not use DNS for this? Because there's not that kind of resolution, there's not that search, and the RIRs magically do this for you. Okay, and so it finds the nearest covering INetNum for a particular query. The geofeed files have scope. You'll notice this geofeed file has at least 4 ranges in it. Okay, 4 INetNums can point into it, and when following that INetNum, you use the longest match and only what is covered by it. So if you're coming in for the INetNum for 147.28, yada yada, you don't look at the others because they're not authoritative. Okay. So INet6num, of course, multiple of them can, as I just pointed out, can refer to the same file if the file is not signed, and we're going to learn about signing in a minute. Please serve the geofeed data over HTTPS. And if the geofeed data were pointed to by the owner's INetNum, and if you believe there's strength in INetNum's authentication, then you have some confidence in the geofeed's authenticity. Whois, let's say, varies in quality. So there's an optional glorp that I'll lead you through in a second, whereas you sign a digest of the file with the private key of the RPKI certificate owning the covering prefix. And by the way, Aaron, of course, doesn't use INetNums, they use net ranges. Who cares? The signature is a strong signature. It's just glorp at the bottom of the file. You can see it. But when this happens, that file cannot be pointed to by multiple INetNums for different ranges because the signature is only good for that range. Okay? So this looks painful, but it isn't. You can parse bulk whois data. It's publicly available, so you don't have to do all these whois queries. Even Arian has it partially available, and you can beg. But there's an app for it. Massimo's written one called Geofeed Finder. You just run a binary, and you get all the geofeeds in the internet. Blam. And I believe that's the whole story. Questions? You do?
Jeff has a question in the chat, which is what exactly is the signature signing over? Is it
Everything
text,
above it.
the text?
Everything above it.
So it's the text blob that's above it.
Yes, it's the text. It's actually signing over a digest of the text, of course.
And then Jeff has a follow-on question, including
It's-
comment lines.
It's disgustingly specified in the draft, by the way. Further comment by Jeff? I've got to dig for it. Just a sec. I'll try to learn how to do that.
It's the exclamation thing next to the number of participants. Yep.
Jeff Haas, no. Jeff Houston, what is that signing over? I test ASM1 encoding the text. Read the draft, including comment lines. Read the draft. Yes, you could change the signature, just cover just the relevant lines, but which relevant lines? No, that's the wrong draft, Eric. You'll have to change YMDK to IETF because it's actually a working group document now. But otherwise, Eric is correct. And I can pop up the document, of course, and bore you with it. But to Jeff's point, Russ has done a solid job of the signing. The problem with the signing isn't so much the what it signs over, how you do the digest and all that noise. The problem is how you get the key with which to sign. Okay, and I believe that George Michelson and some others, I forget whom, have had a proposal. It's an now expired draft. It's pointed to in our draft, which suggests how to do that. Let me see if I can figure out how to share a look at the draft itself, since that seems to be of interest. And so I hit this share thingy again.
Yep, and I need to click the button granting you access.
Didn't change my mind. I haven't got one. Oh, application. Like this one. Share.
There we go, that worked.
Modern science. So the first question is what you sign over, Jeff. And we made up a trust anchor for this. The end entity served is displayed. It's the usual GORP. We've seen it before. And out the other end. Probably can. Will this survive me stretching the window? Yes. Whoa. So, but the key is the issue. So I think that's what you really want, Jeff. Can't you give him the mic? Can't we all just talk?
People should be able to talk by clicking the mic icon.
Yes, it's the RTA, which we would like to be revived. Jeff, he's in chat saying the RTA. We would love the RTA to be revived because that solves getting the key. You can actually dig for the key, but there are no common tools for it. People, by the way, are actually using this. It's actually destroying things in the wild. So those of us who are paranoid would like to see more authenticity, but in reality, probably people, compared to what they're doing for geofeed data today, unauthenticated who is probably a distinct improvement. Good. Enough said?
Yep, I think so. Thank you for being willing to do this at short notice. And
Sorry for the sloppiness. I was totally unprepared and unrehearsed.
no worries. Sorry about the entertainment with trying to make sharing work. I don't know if anybody's got any other questions, but if not, we will call this done for now. Thank you, everyone. I think we're all looking forward. Yep. I think we're all looking forward to being able to see everybody in person again. Unfortunately, not in Prague, but possibly in San Francisco, I think is what the next one's scheduled for. I believe that there will be a recording of this later. And if anybody's got any other last questions, thank you very much and good night or good morning or good afternoon.
And thank you to Mideko, who I assume is here late at night or early in the morning.
Actually, they said they weren't going to make it and we were on our own, but largely because it is the middle of the night / early in the morning / something awful for them. So thank you very much, everybody, and see you at the next reunion.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hello, this is just audio test.